The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Welcome to our Pareidolia Brew Fest festivities episode podcast extravaganza. This is Dave, your host and author of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. Make sure to find us on the interwebs. We are at FloridaBeerBlog.com, FloridaBeerPodcast.com being the main site. We're also a proud member of the Florida Podcast Network, and you can find them at FloridaPodcastNetwork.com. We're also on socials. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Florida Beer Blog, FL Beer Blog if you are on Facebook. Now, today's going to be kind of an interesting episode. We are at Loft 305 above the hardware store, the original site of Pareidolia Brewing. I can hear them downstairs having some drinks, and I'm going to go join them here in a few minutes. But earlier this afternoon was the Rocky Water Brew Fest. Rocky Water Brew Fest is in Eau Gallie, which is a part of Melbourne. Used to be its own city until 1969, at which time the residents of Eau Gallie and the residents of Melbourne decided to merge and come under one banner, being Melbourne. Now, Eau Gallie is a rough translation to Rocky Water, and this festival is being put on by Intracoastal Brewing, based out of Melbourne, maybe 2 blocks away from the Eau Gallie Square, which is where the beer festival is being held. Now, what's nice about the Rocky Water Brew Fest is this is a brewers festival. Not a whole lot of distributors, not a lot of macros, actually no distributors, no macros, not even brewery reps. These are owners and brewers themselves coming out, pouring the beers, talking with people, and really getting a great word out for everything that's going on in the Space Coast brew scene. And over the next couple of episodes, you're going to hear those interviews that I had with the brewers and the owners that came out to pour and really kind of showcase and celebrate everything that's going on with craft beer in this particular area of Florida. First person that you're going to hear from is Pete Anderson from Pareidolia Brewing in Sebastian. He is a particularly great friend of the podcast. He actually brought me in so I could help him out a little bit, get set up, and gave us a few minutes of his time before the gates opened and the flood of craft beer drinkers came in. So we're going to be able to chat with him. And then based on our conversation, got a few more coming on that'll kind of round out everything that's going on in Central Florida, East Central Florida craft beer. Enjoy. So we are here with Pete Anderson, head brewer, owner of Pareidolia Brewing at the Rocky Water Brew Fest. And what I want to talk to you about is the joy of going to a beer festival. Because obviously, from my point of view, I buy a ticket, I drink beer. How far in advance do you have to plan if you're going, when you're going, what you're bringing, and so on?
Thanks for having me on the show, by the way. Thanks for being here. Great question. It depends on the time. We have 5 brew fests lined up for the next 6 weeks. We have a break at Thanksgiving and then another one the following weekend. So knowing that, we'll start planning what we're going to bring probably about 2 months ahead of time. You want to bring specialty beers to the beer fest. You don't want to just bring all core beers. I mean, we don't anyway. We try to bring something special that people will go, wow, haven't had that before, never heard of that before. So as far as the planning goes for what we're going to bring brewing, it's usually about a month or 2 ahead of time.
And I guess that brings to mind a good question, especially for something like this. Is this a beer festival? And do you generally participate in beer festivals that try to bring the locals out to sort of celebrate? Or is this something where you try to move a little bit farther away to get more people to travel to Sebastian to come visit you?
We do all festivals as long as they're charity related. That's my first stipulation. If it's for charity, we'll participate if we can, if there's not a conflict of schedule. But we've participated in festivals. I just did one over in Cape Coral, Southwest Florida, 3.5-hour drive. That was cool. We've done them in Orlando, Tampa, down in Jupiter, pretty much anywhere in the state. If our schedule allows and it's a charity event, we try to do that. It's just a good way to go meet some new customers if they don't know who you are. Give them a chance to get to know you, and maybe when they're in your local town, they'll come visit your tap room. So for us, it's marketing, and it's a good way also to visit with the other brewers, the community. It's almost like a family reunion, especially after COVID. Seeing some of these guys, we haven't gotten together in over a year, and it's like seeing family again.
Awesome. And you did kind of mention that in that there are definitely a couple of breweries here that aren't necessarily breweries, but they're home brewers trying to get the name out, trying to get that word out and so on. Is this coming to brew festivals, slinging the beer, the best way to attract investors, to attract interest, to attract what you need to finally take that next step and open up a brick and mortar place of your own?
I don't know if it's the best way. It's certainly the most personal way that you can connect with people. I'm sure that some investors have met their match at a brew fest, but there are definitely, we did a few of these when we were still home brewers. We did a few to get our name out there and also to use it as a test market. What is the response to your beer? I always tell home brewers, your friends and family will tell you make the best beer in the world. It's when people want to lay down cold, hard cash for your product is when you find out, are you making good beer or not? But the festivals are a good way really to just make a personal connection with potential future customers. And I guess some people come up to me at other events and talk about investing, but to me, that's not really the best place to do it. You've got so much going on, and you're really trying to connect with people on a different level.
Now, with a brew festival, obviously there are some people that didn't bring their own tents, but a lot of people have, like you have, your own specific area. You've got the tent that has your imagery on it. You've got the backdrop. You've got the incredible carboy case that you said have traveled quite a bit. How far into the process of opening a brewery did you realize these are all necessary? This is something that you have to do.
Having been to Beer Fest going back to the late 80s when I lived out in California and Oregon, again, going back to these beer fests are really marketing opportunities. So the more branding you can do, the better it is for you. You don't need to start there. If you don't have a branded tent, that's fine. Just have a tent for the shade. Just make sure you have something to give out to people. Stickers are a good thing. You can always bring business cards or flyers or things like that. You're trying to get people to come visit you, or if you're opening one, let them know where you're going to be and when you're going to be opening. But it is a marketing event ultimately, so you're as much of your brand as you can present. We've built ours up over the years, looking at other people's tents and seeing other products that they bring with them. So it's kind of an evolution, really.
And it's kind of interesting that you mentioned products because looks like you have some merchandise that's available for sale. I know other people brought a ton of merchandise for sale, and there are other people as well that have a little bit of nothing. Is it really the best place to sell merchandise, or is it just a little bit just to keep the branding opportunities alive?
Yeah, we've tried selling merch at some of our events, and you sell a little bit, but you have to have inventory. You've got to track it. Then you've got cash or card transactions on top of everything else you're already doing. So it's not a bad thing to do. I've seen some breweries that just sell out of their merch, and that's cool. For us, it's more about the beer. So we'd rather people come over talking about our beer. But there's nothing wrong with if you want to sell merch. We haven't found it to be the most successful.
Gotcha. So with the beer that you brought, how much of this is standard that you can hopefully find if you go to Pareidolia, and how much of this is just something crazy that you decided to make for this event?
We generally will bring about one of our core beers, just because if it's in distribution in a particular area, we want to let people know, hey, this is available at local bars and restaurants. Almost everything else we bring is a one-off. For example, we have a pale ale brewed 100% with Florida-grown hops. That's unusual. People didn't know hops can grow in Florida. We have a toasted marshmallow porter. We're technically heading into winter season, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. We'll bring fruit beers. Sometimes we'll bring sours. We bring some crazy stuff, some barrel-aged stuff occasionally. So we're trying to really showcase not only the brand, but also the diversity of what we brew. At the tap room, we have 16 taps, but when we come to a festival, we bring maybe 3 or 4 different flavors, and that's about it.
And with the flavors that you bring and the beers that you bring, how much does the sophistication of the event goer's palate do you have to adhere to and sort of take into account?
That's a great question. The gamut. You've got people, this is their first beer fest they've ever been to coming up. Naturally, it seems naturally, they often ask for what's your lightest beer if they're just new to the craft beer scene. Right down to, I've had distributors, I've had beer judges come up and taste our beer and give us feedback. So from the novice all the way to people making a living in the industry.
That's amazing. Do you get the opposite? I've had some other brewers tell me that they have people that come up that only want the heaviest beer, the most ABV possible.
We find that to be true around the last hour of every event. They'll be like, what's your highest alcohol? We're like, are you sure you want that now? You look like you already have been there. But yes, there are definitely those people that seek out the high ABV stuff. They paid their money, they want to feel good, and they want to feel good quick. They're the ones we usually watch towards the end of the day to see if they make it all the way. I suggest doing that.
Of course not. I guess a little bit of a rundown. What did you actually bring with you today?
Okay, as I said earlier, we have the Where's Wamama, which was actually hops grown through the University of Florida program over in Wimauma, Florida, which is just outside of Bradenton. They're still test growing hops over there to see if it is a viable crop for Florida. We've also made beers with hops grown in Fort Pierce through the USDA program. So we've actually been brewing beer with Florida-grown hops now for close to 6 years. We probably have put out, I wouldn't say the most, but among the most commercially available hops or Florida hop-grown beers in the state because of the 2 programs that we've been working with. We have our toasted marshmallow porter. Again, the base beer of that is our slow paddle porter, which is one of our core beers that you can put almost anything in it and it's going to be a great beer. So that's one we like to play with. We'll do barrel aging. We do coconut versions. We do chocolate cake versions. Quite a bit of just different fun stuff there. The Felix Pineapple Blonde, that's just going to go over well good in Florida. Just sunshine and pineapples. And that's a really rich pineapple flavor on top of a really nice blonde ale. That base beer is our Barrier Island Blonde, which is one of our best-selling light beers that we have. And then our core beer, as I said, we try to bring core beers at least to every festival. And 32958, that is also called Zip Code because we are in the old post office building in Sebastian. That is our number 1 seller and has been for 5 years. It's a juicy IPA, Citra, Mosaic, and just yum. We only have a 5-barrel brew house, so we have to actually brew that beer every other batch right now just to keep up until we expand and add some more tanks.
That's amazing. And obviously, when you expand and you're able to get bigger and better, people will know about it by coming to all the beer festivals here in Florida. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave, and thanks Florida Beer Blog for supporting craft beer. Love it.
Based on Pete's recommendations, I actually spoke to Jim Scortino, owner of Scortino & Son Brewery Supplies in Sebastian. Now, the great thing is Jim and his son, both of which were there, started off doing a lot of work helping to support and encourage and supply a lot of the home brewers that eventually opened up breweries on the Space Coast. In fact, Jim himself helped Pete at Pareidolia Brewing setting up his system. So we had a great little conversation talking about the explosive growth that Space Coast craft beer is starting to see. Well, I guess let's talk about beer here on the Space Coast, because obviously we've had some people that have mentioned that it's all your fault.
Yeah, well,
that they started brewing.
Yeah, a lot of the breweries here. Let's see, Pareidolia, Mash Monkeys. I think a lot of them have started as our customers and our friends, and then they've grown into breweries. Pareidolia, I helped him set up that brewery and worked there as a brewer for, he said a year. I think it was more like 2 years maybe, but it was a while.
But the scene here has really started to explode.
Oh, yeah.
And like not only that, but there's a couple of breweries here that aren't open yet. They're looking for spaces or they're in the middle of building.
That's right. We have Brass Knuckle, who's over here, which is one of our customers now, and we've been supplying him with material and canning machines and other things so he can start his brewery. I don't know if there's anybody else here today that we are helping out, but
Has it been interesting to watch the beer scene here on the Space Coast really explode?
It's growing constantly, and people still love their craft beer, so I see it's continuing on. I don't see it stopping.
Well, I guess, is your business starting to grow because of people going in, seeing all these places, and then wanting to jump in?
We're seeing new customers every week. It's a little slower because of the COVID situation, but I see it coming back strong. I don't see a problem with the continued growth in the craft beer industry.
Gotcha. For the breweries that are in the area, is there generally a style, particular flavor profile that everybody seems to kind of gravitate towards? Like, what is the beer of the Space
I would
Coast?
say still IPAs are pretty much the beer. We're seeing more of a push now, though, towards lagers and pilsners, and a lot of the customers, I think, are looking for that lighter style of beer. So I would say you're going to see IPAs, and you're going to see that new interest in lagers.
And that's got to be easier for a home brewer to make a lager because they don't have to worry about tying up tanks and production time and everything else.
Well, lagers take a different temperature when you ferment. So for a lot of people, they can't do it, but now there's some new yeasts that would actually make a faux lager that go up to 100 degrees you can ferment at, and it makes great beer. So
it's kind of amazing. So if people are interested about getting the stuff done, started here at the Space Coast, where should they go?
Our store is located in Sebastian. It's 9599 Gator Drive, Unit 4. We do teach classes, and for people that don't have equipment, they can use our equipment and actually ferment at our store. So if you're interested in learning how to make beer, we can show you. And when you leave our store in a couple of weeks, you're going to end up with a couple cases of beer, maybe more than that. We can make up to 20 gallons at a time. So we have a lot of regular customers that make their beer at our store. So
that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
If you read the Florida Beer blog, or if you follow us on social media, you know that I am an unabashed fan of Ivanhoe Park Brewing in Orlando. And it was actually a great, great surprise to see that they were going to be there, being poured by none other than Eric Van Warmer, their head brewer. So we had a great little conversation about how Ivanhoe Park is starting to grow and how coming to a beer festival like Rocky Water is helping them get the word out.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm happy. It's beer. It's going to be a great day.
Well, I was going to say, this beer festival kind of snuck up on me. And yet all the people that I wanted to do interviews with, they're all here. Is this a beer festival that Ivanhoe Park has been to?
As far as I know, once. But this is my first time here. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see all the people.
That's kind of amazing. And how much growth has Ivanhoe Park been experiencing? Are their beers found here in store shelves and in taps? Or is this...
Not here presently. Right now, I think we are in Daytona. We moved down down to Orlando. Central Florida, all the theme parks, pretty much. We're keeping all the tourists happy, that's for sure.
That's amazing. So how difficult is it coming to a beer festival that isn't necessarily hyper local? Because obviously Intracoastal is literally 2 blocks away, but it takes an hour and a half or so to get to Ivanhoe Park?
Yeah, roughly about an hour, 15 minutes. I think it's good for us to bring different exposure, let people know we're out there, we're from Orlando, we make good beer, come see us.
And do people usually do that when they come to festivals?
We've had some follow through at different festivals, and people will say, hey, we saw you at such and such beer fest, and it's like, thanks for visiting. And of course, where we're at, they've got all the Orlando attractions to visit and spend the day enjoying it.
Is it difficult to get rid of the, I don't know how to say this politely, but the stereotype of what Orlando has to be? Because obviously you sort of remove yourself from that as much as possible and kind of go to the old school Orlando, the pre-theme park Orlando.
That's a good question. That's something I've never actually even thought about. I'm not sure. That's good. I'm not sure what stereotype we would steer away from or worry about. Never thought about
but you're
that.
definitely not theme park
No.
specific. I mean, yes, if you go into the history of Joyland and everything, it is sort of there, but it seems like that's just something that happens over there, and Ivanhoe Park is doing its more Orlando-focused thing.
Yeah, and it just, that exposure, the distribution side really helps us get further out and meet more people. And I think that, going through the theme parks that way, we get exposed to people that aren't even from Florida, from around the world. So we get that follow through too. And it's kind of neat to hear the people, hey, we were at the park, we saw your beer, now we're here. So I don't think we have a stereotype. Man, I hope not.
So how difficult is it to, not just obviously getting the word out is easy because you're here, but making it stick, making sure that people remember Ivanhoe Park and actually decide to come to the brewery once the event is over, when they're on vacation, when they're passing through?
I think the main idea is good beer. We have to have conversation. We have to have beer, conversation back and forth, explain to people who we are, and, that brief amount of time that we're giving out a beer sample. So I think really it comes down to the beer. They strike that memory. Hey, they had a really good beer. Let's go see what else they have. And so this time we brought a little different variety instead of just our core beers and stuff like that. We want people to see, hey, yeah, we have core beers, but we also love to brew, and we've got a pretty good selection. Triple IPA, a California Common, and a Rice Lager.
I definitely am interested in all of those, especially the California Common. It's a style that you don't really see here in Florida.
It seems to have become recently a little more popular, but it's a first for us. It's a first time out of the brewery, and we're getting good feedback on it.
I mean, it's basically anchor steam for 2 decades, and
Sure.
Now it's starting to finally show up.
And it's our take on it, so we really didn't follow anything specific other than the base for a California Common and, of course, the lager yeast at ale temp. So I hope people enjoy it. It's going to be interesting.
And is this a good place to sort of get the feedback? If the California Common lands with a thud, is that something that you'll go back to the brew house, talk to the team, and kind of retool?
Possibly. I mean, so far the feedback's been good. I expect it to do really well, but we'll find out shortly which kegs go first, which beer's done. And in my opinion, I think the triple IPA is going to go very quickly. And I think solely it's because of the ABV, but we'll be all right. We'll give them what they want.
I was going to say, this day there's a pleasant breeze finally, but it's been a little on the hot side. I would assume that a triple IPA would just melt people.
Yeah, I was kind of worried about that too, but we'll see. Small samples. Hopefully everybody will get it and be careful.
Nice. And obviously the next question would be is if this does go over well, if people have a lot of buzz from Ivanhoe Park, if this is something that people are continuing to ask for, is this a good impetus to go talk to distribution and start maybe thinking about increasing to this area?
Well, that would be great. That would be a great conversation to have, and that'd be a heck of a place to come down. I mean, Intracoastal's got this place pretty locked down.
Yeah.
And that's great people to be involved with. We got to do a collab with them not too long ago.
Nice.
So we get to come out and play. But yeah, I think they've got this place pretty well covered.
Awesome. Well, I hope that your kegs manage to last at least most of the event.
Yeah.
That would be great.
We should. We've got a little over a barrel of beer, so we'll be good.
Yeah,
got
we'll
some
see.
refills back here waiting.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Another formerly sleepy town that is really starting to explode with its craft beer scene is Sanford. And I was able to speak to Matt Rolfe, one of the co-owners of Deviant Wolfe, which is one of their biggest and brightest stars when it comes to craft beer. I was going to say, how difficult is it to actually set things up for a beer fest? Because I think a lot of people don't really understand exactly what it takes to bring all this stuff.
General beer fest setup isn't always that bad. It's always the beginning when the kegs are a little warm. You're trying to get everything balanced. Plus, we're doing 2 festivals today.
Oh my gosh,
So
where's
our,
the other
our good
one?
one's in Orlando, and I'm sure that one's pouring great. The towers here, there's not much insulation. They're short runs, so they tend to pour pretty hard.
Gotcha. So, being in Sanford, I guess, is it more of the Orlando, Central Florida beer scene, or are you kind of close enough to the Space Coast to where you can sort of attach yourself to that, or have you sort of developed its own little area?
I'm going to say it's a mix. I mean, we definitely are still part of Central Florida. We get a lot of, people from Oviedo, Seminole County, DeBerry to Land area, but we definitely have a good crossover, I think, especially with New Smyrna and down the Space Coast. I'm just being along I-4. I think we get a lot of East Coast run-throughs. And in Orlando, I think there's a feeling that Sanford's still kind of far because there's so many places to drink. The ride back can get dicey for people. So a lot of times that's maybe a one day a week, weekend trip, not a weekday trip.
Interesting. And I know that Sanford has kind of developed its own miniature scene almost. I know they're trying to really promote that heavily. Is that the kind of thing where maybe day trippers or weekend warriors come over, rent a room, and just sort of enjoy Sanfording, as I have heard it called?
Yeah, Sanfording. They've got their own hashtag. Definitely. I mean, we've got 4 breweries within walking distance. I mean, craft beer bars, cideries. We've got a little bit of everything. So you can go up there and still hit 7-8 places and still not get everywhere you want to be in a day. Now, hotels, everything up there is really Airbnb.
Okay.
There's no dedicated downtown hotel. That's something I think we'd love to see soon.
I completely understand. Absolutely. And I guess with a beer festival like this, how far is too far? At what point have you traveled so far away from your home that while the people may be interested in your beers, they're not necessarily going to travel because it's just a little too out of the way?
Yeah, I think a little bit of personal preference plays in. We love the whole crew here at Intracoastal, and the fact that it's a pure nonprofit event definitely helps. And if we can get a weekend away, it's a bonus for us as well. We've got a 5-year-old at home, so if we can line it up and get a weekend out, it's great. We personally, we don't distribute that much, but we do it broadly, just via Progressive. So we've gone up to Hogtown and Gainesville. I think going maybe all the way down to South Florida might be a little far for us, but it really depends on, for each brewery, their own model. For us, we do take a lot of personal preference into account on whether we know them, whether we have time for it, because we're still a small brewery, so sometimes time comes into it more than anything.
And then how often does the community and where you're going to be pouring take that into event? Because you said you do have 2 festivals today. I would assume that they don't have the same beers. How did you determine, which beers are going to which location and why,
Is it bad if I just say what we had in Slim's?
No.
No, we did have to balance it because we have an event in the tap room next weekend. We have a big concert in the alleyway right behind us going on. So we did hold some back for that. But I think we have the IPA is at both, the strawberry waffle sour, our breakfast sour is at both. And then we have our light lager, and I believe they have our Oktoberfest there. So we kind of mix it up. If we only have a couple kegs left of something, we might hold it for one versus the other. And it'll come down to preference too. Like, when we're halfway through it and I want a beer, what do I want to drink?
That makes perfect sense. I completely understand. And with the Central Florida beer community, it seems like it's really starting to come into its own. But you kind of mentioned there's a good chunk of travel between a lot of the locations. Do you think that until there are more focused communities like Sanford, how you've got yourself and Sanford Brewing and a couple of others in one central area, do you think that that's going to be a detriment to really exploding the way that a place like Denver or Asheville has?
I mean, I don't see it as a detriment. I mean, our local Sanford drinkers, they'll still go out of town to hit Tactical Sideward all the way over to Sun Creek. And speaking of the distance, I mean, it could take us 45 minutes to an hour pending traffic to get from our spot over to Sun Creek, but that's all still Central Florida. So you've got a little bit of that sprawl in the area, but I mean, a lot of us started up together. So we've been supporting each other from the beginning. And you do have a lot of those clusters already, like downtown Milk District area. You've got a couple breweries walking distance. There are neighborhoods like that already. So I think it's cool. Each area develops its own personality based on, the people that already live there. But on the weekend, sometimes those people are going to travel to the other areas to get around it as is. So.
That makes perfect sense. Last question for you, and I guess I'm a little disappointed. How often do the people that know Deviant Wolfe, the fans of Deviant Wolfe, come over and say, but you didn't bring Sour Manjaro?
I do expect to hear that today quite a bit. I think this may be the first festival we don't have it. And it literally turned into what we had. We didn't have any Slims of it at the time, and trying to jump it from the halves to the Slims, we just kind of ran out of time. I should have brought cans because, I know I'm going to get that today. That beer is taking on a life of its own.
for better or for worse for you and your team.
Yeah, it's what we became known for, and it's something we're really proud of, the fact that we've been making it this many years, and the people who liked it at the beginning still like it now, so we haven't messed it up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And the next time you come here, I need some Sour Manjaro, even if it's just for me.
I hear you. I'll bring it next time. Appreciate it.
If you talk about beer in the cocoa area, one of the first names that has to come up is Bugnutty, mostly because it's such an awesome, fun name to say, and partially because they've just been around for so long, making some incredible beers. Spoke with Jon Sheldon, tried a couple more beers of his, some incredible stuff that they decided to bring. And also I will be giving you a picture of that brew system that they set up specifically for the event. The one question that I've been asking everybody, and I guess Bugnutty being is you're in cocoa, you're in sort of the heart of the Space Coast, is has the Space Coast beer scene really exploded to where it's on par with, not even just the rest of the state, but the rest of the...
Well, it's getting better. It's getting better. When I first moved down here, Sam Adams was a craft beer, and it was called an import. So I always say that, Florida is about 10 years behind the rest of the country for beer, and Brevard County is 10 years behind Florida, unfortunately. But it's getting a lot better. And we're adding some more breweries, so that's good.
And I was going to say, an event like this, it really does showcase kind of what's in the area. This isn't really a commuter. I'm not seeing the big names. I'm not seeing the major macros here. This really does seem to be more of a home ground.
Right, and that's what Intra did. They bring in all the people that they know, all the small breweries like us. And so that way we have a chance to show what we have, and we distribute a little bit, so it helps so people can see what it is, and when they go out, they see the brand and buy it at the mansion or wherever they're at. So,
yeah. And since you have been around for a minute or so, do you have a lot of people that'll come up and be like, "Hey, I've seen you around"?
We do. Fortunately, we started distributing right away when we opened, so we already had accounts that we knew the owners of the business, so they brought us in,
Gotcha.
Which was great.
Do you still have a lot of people that, hey, I live in Cocoa, I have no idea who you are?
Yep, we have that, even though they walk by our brewery, and they're like, oh my God, you're a brewery. How long when did you just open? It was 8 years ago.
That's amazing. And in that time, how much have you been able to grow the palate of the drinkers in the area?
A lot. I mean, we hardly ever hear now, what do you have that's like Bud Light? And now people are actually coming in. They're more knowledgeable about the beer that's out there, which is great. And we have pretty good staff. They can answer questions on some of the odd styles that we'll have. We're more of a traditional brewery. We do some fun, crazy things, but mostly ours are styles that exist, as a normal style.
Is that difficult, though? Because you've got people that have known these styles. They've maybe had them from the macros. Is it difficult to know that when somebody has a Kolsch, for example, they're going to be comparing it to something that was similar? They have a wit beer, they're going to compare it to Blue Moon.
And that's, honestly, that's the goal when we make something that's like kind of we want to take from the macro, take a tap from them. So trying to brew against Budweiser or whoever, when they're big, they're able to make better beer because they have scientists doing it with them. And, and we think the same way. We try to make everything we do repeatable every single time, and it slows us down a little bit on the brew day, but paying attention to those little tiny details, and that way we can compare. Like we have our beer with us today called Flaky Blonde, and it's a Blue Moon style, so, but when you taste it, you can tell it's different, but you can still go, this is just as good and or better in most cases.
And was that something that sort of was in your mind when you decided on the beers that were coming to today's event?
Today, really what we did yesterday, we said, let's see what the day looks like today, and then we'll decide what the beers we'll bring. Like normally we bring a lot more IPAs. We only brought one with us today because it's the day is going to be more of probably a lighter beer day, but we brought a blueberry beer that's 11.4%. So.
Whoa. Usually it's the fruit
not a light
goes in.
one.
Yeah, exactly.
And we also brought our Reese's peanut butter cup that we do for Halloween. And when you mix the two together, they taste like peanut butter and jelly. So.
Oh, my gosh. That's amazing. That is dangerous,
yes,
but amazing.
Yeah.
Is that something that you sort of expect from beer festivals nowadays? Not so much like, hey, what's your standard?
Yeah.
Like, hey, what radioactive material did you put in
Right,
this
exactly.
beer?
And that's what most breweries are doing. They're showing off the crazy stuff that they can do. We really like to, bring some standard stuff and some, crazy stuff, because people want crazy and people want standard. We have just, we brought our stout with us. It's on all the time. 007's our IPA that we brought with us. It's on all the time. So no hazies with us or anything like that.
So what I find interesting is like you brought the standards, you brought some crazy stuff, but you also brought a full-on table.
Yeah, but this is our portable bar. This
is amazing.
Okay, this whole setup started when I was working at Cocoa Beach Brewing Company. This is old, and this last week I cut it down from 6 feet to 4 feet, so it's easier to maneuver around. But it looks like our bar.
It does.
Except for now our bar at the new place, the top is black instead of white.
Oh, gotcha. That is kind of incredible, but it also feels like it would be a beast to move.
It's not. So there's a little cart right there.
Okay. Yeah.
And everything the bar top goes on top of the cart that's under the table there.
Oh, okay.
And then everything goes on top of that, so we can just roll right out of here.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So, is this, generally speaking, a good event? I've heard a lot of people say great things about Rocky Water.
Yeah,
I didn't really know about it, but all the interviews that I wanted to take, all the people were here today.
Yeah, John, Kyle, and Don will do a great job putting this event on, and they're great people, and it goes to a good cause. And it's always, even the years that it's rained, it's always been fun. And they make sure they take care of us, and in turn we take care of them on the Saturday. So
awesome! That is great to hear, and I definitely can't wait for it to get started.
Yeah,
thank you.
Hello, this is producer Jemmy, founder of the Florida Podcast Network, here to thank our partner, Mainline Marketing. Great equipment can make the difference between an ordinary podcasting experience and one that is immersive and inspiring. The sound quality produced with the Shure MV7 podcasting microphone is simply far superior to other options on the market. The voice isolation technology will help you sound great, even when you're not in an expensive studio. But not only is the sound quality simply unreal, but the Shure MV7 podcasting mic is very easy to use with 2 output options. So whether your show format and setup call for you to plug your microphone into the USB port right on your computer or to use it with an XLR cable into your mixer, you'll find the setup is easy. The Shure MV7 sound quality is top-notch, and it's easy to use, versatile, and also looks really great for your social media shots. So thank you again to Mainline Marketing. Having won over 40 various achievement awards, Mainline Marketing has been the go-to audiovisual manufacturers industry rep since 1987. They can be trusted to bring you the best. Visit mainlinemarketing.com today and partner with them. And be sure once again to check out the MV7 podcasting microphone from Shure by going to shure.com. That's SHURE.com. Shure, turning a passion for making great microphones into an obsession.
So this is part 1 of the Rocky Water Brew Fest. Our next episode is going to be part 2 with 5 additional interviews from people in and around the Space Coast craft brewery scene. Definitely follow us on social media, like and subscribe to the podcast, and you will be the first to be notified when that episode comes out. Thank you so much for everybody for giving us a couple of minutes on a beautiful Saturday afternoon to talk about craft beer. You're going to hear some more of it later. And for you, thank you for listening. Crack open a cold one for me. We'll see you next week and drink Florida Craft.